For those of you familiar with Batman, it's really just a story of revenge. A man and his wife are robbed, shot, and ultimately killed, leaving behind a son who grows up living a life based on revenge. Now with that understanding, is this the real life version of the ultimate revenge, or just mistaken identity? On the streets of Tampa, Florida, sun beaming, kids playing in the yard, the neighborhood ice cream truck makes its rounds. Everyone knows Mr. Keetley. The ice cream man is a staple of the community. Sometimes he allows people to get things and pay for it later. It was a shining day in January 2010. A female was making an order when the truck was ambushed by two males, and in the attempt to rob him, there was a struggle in the truck. They let off multiple shots. Keetley was hit 4 times, and they got away with a jackpot of a whole $12 in cash. Almost enough for a medium pizza. Meanwhile, Michael Keetley was left for dead, but he was able to drive down the street about 4 houses down and get help. Soon after, the Hillsbury Sheriff's Department began investigating the case. They obtained a description from Mr. Keetley about his attackers while he was in the hospital, that being of a black female and 2 black masked men wearing gloves, driving a white Buick. Working on that description, they were not able to find any leads nor make any arrests. Not too long after the incident, Michael Keetley was back driving his ice cream truck, which was more of a purple van. He was fed up with the police's lack of urgency and began his own investigation. In between physical therapy for his partially paralyzed right arm, every waking moment was used to track down and find more information, talking to witnesses and obtaining evidence. Week after week, month after month, he did everything he could think of. Talked with as many people as he could, put out a reward of $5,000, everything. Even ran down or hobbled up to a 13-year-old girl and interrogated her to tears for information. As his investigation continued, it became word on the street that Hispanic males were responsible for his robbery and shooting, not black males like he said initially. Mr. Keetley finally got a prime suspect, Omar Bailon, who was known as Creeper. Keetley will go on to tell everyone he knew, friends, girlfriend, neighbors, anyone who would listen, to be on the lookout for a man with the nickname Creeper, and had that name tattooed on his arm. To not call the police, but to call him. With hundreds of internet searches and months of footwork, talking to people and connecting dots, he would go on to find someone who fit the name he was looking for on MySpace of all places. He found his name, dad's name, and address. 507 Ocean Mist Court. That block will be important real soon. He would have his girlfriend drive him through that neighborhood looking for tags and writing down license plates for cars that could possibly confirm his findings, which made her nervous. While this was happening, Keetley was updating the sheriff's department on his findings, but was unable to provide the names of any witnesses, which confused the sheriffs. He also never updated his original description of 2 black men to 2 Hispanic men, as he had heard throughout his investigation. The night before Thanksgiving, since everyone was off the next day, there was a family get-together, and a group of 7 men were on a porch drinking beers, smoking weed, doing a little bit of coke, and playing cards on 604 Ocean Mist Court. When a dark blue van pulled up to an already dark street, a figure approached them with what appeared to be the word sheriff written in white across his chest, with a firearm in hand. "Where's Creeper?" the figure asks. "Which one of you is Creeper?" he demands. They look puzzled. The figure then demands everyone's ID. He ordered all of them to look towards the house, lay down, and produce their IDs. As they complied, one of the men says, "It's in the car," and steps forward. The figure starts firing towards him and the men on the ground. One of them starts to run away. He gets hit in the back of the head. Amazingly, he would go on to survive. Another tries to run. He gets hit in the leg and then the chest when he's turned by the first shot. Still, he miraculously is able to crawl away and get over a 6-foot fence by using a chair to hurl himself over it after being hit 4 times. Shots kept ringing out until the .45 caliber was empty, leaving 6 out of the 7 men hit. Brothers Juan and Pedro Guitron passed on the scene. Paramedics were able to save the other 4. One of the surviving victims made a positive identification from a hospital bed. When Keetley was detained, he was found in a dark blue van, which he claims was two-toned because of the gray bottom. The only thing about that is the police have a witness, a friend of Keetley who paints cars, and on Thanksgiving Day, the day after the incident, would be asked to paint his car two-toned. The friend said he didn't have enough paint, but gave Michael the directions to the Napa where he gets his paint from. The police will go on to track down the receipt and identify Keetley as the buyer of the silver paint. Another friend, I guess we're using friend pretty loosely here, would testify that he and his wife would go over to Keetley's house to hang out and do target practice. After his robbery, before the Thanksgiving incident. The man and his wife would collect the casings and reload them. The police would get those casings, and experts would go on to testify that those casings were fired from the same gun, even though the weapon from the Thanksgiving incident would never be found. But when the police was investigating what happened that night, there would be texts going around that neighborhood suspecting the ice cream man of doing the shootings because Creeper was bragging about robbing and shooting Keetley, so people just assumed it must have been him getting his revenge, which made Michael Keetley the first and only suspect the police decided to focus on. All this evidence, and Keetley would be in jail for 10 years before his case would eventually end in a mistrial in 2020. The jury felt like the witnesses were unreliable because they were not sober at the time, plus the darkness of a front yard on a block without streetlights, and they were made to turn around before the firing started. And probably most importantly, the medical evidence that showed Keetley had no use of his right hand. The defense also brought up that the main detective on the case had a history of suspensions and internal affairs investigations for misconduct by lying and breaking their rules of conduct. The trial will start 3 years after the initial mistrial. During retrial, the prosecution led more on the evidence found in Keetley's house that included the notebook that had Creeper's real name, dad's name, and home address on the first page. Also, his laptop had searches for Creeper and his real name hundreds of times, police shirts over 1,000 times, and more evidence that led to the idea that this was all a story of revenge. Michael Keetley will go on to be found guilty of the double murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There's always something interesting happening in Florida. Put a 33 in the chat if you'd like to hear more stories.